With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18 plus.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Podcast, the place to catch up on all the regional and national rugby in Wales. You can find us on all the usual social media platforms and message us through there if you want, or you can email us on welshregionalrugbypod@gmail.com. So all the boring stuff out the way, let's talk rugby. Hello and welcome to a bonus edition of the Rap Podcast with me, Lee G, and joining me on my right hand is Jamie. Good evening, Jamie.
Good evening. How are we?
Yeah, very good, mate. Very good. So the other two are still having their hair and makeup done. Can't join us. But yeah, hopefully expecting Reese back at some point and Carwin back at some point as well. So yeah, that'll be all good. But we do have a special guest this evening. So this is a man that pretty much everyone who knows anything about Welsh rugby will have read something that this guy has written. He is Wales Online rugby correspondent, Steff Thomas. Good evening, Steff.
Good evening, and thanks for the invite onto the podcast. Been looking forward to it all week.
So I see, I love that. I love the enthusiasm when we start, like, and then you go, yeah, we're going to talk about Wales rugby, and you go, yeah. The enthusiasm goes down after that. But it's been a hell of a season. Like, this is our first season as a podcast, and what a season to start. So, you know, what's your thoughts on the 22-23 season for the Welsh team and the WRU, mate?
It's been eventful.
Say that again.
Probably the understatement of the year. So my first day, so the start of the season, the start of the season, I was with Westgate Sports Agency. That was eventful enough, and I thought, fresh start, going to Wales Online. Can't get worse. You know, in terms of like bad things happening in Welsh rugby. Then bang, first day. Pivot gone, Gatland appointed, and then you had the sexism allegations, which, to be fair, had been, it's been sort of reported by the Daily Mail about a few months earlier, so it wasn't a total shock. But well, even even if you knew, you'd heard what had happened when you watched the documentary, that was, how can it not hit you if you're a human? So there was that, and then the strike. There was down up at the Vale Hotel where Wales train, where they're based. It was the day of whether the strike would be on or off, and I was up there with nearly every other journalist. I think about from 8 a.m. in the morning. I think I left about 10:30 because I had to do TV stuff, and it was bizarre. There was a few journalists in the cafe, a few by the reception, a few by the door, a few outside in the car park, and literally every single professional rugby player in Wales or close to it turned up. It was remarkable. I've never ever seen anything like that. There was national press there. we like to think rugby's a big sport in Wales, but nationally it's actually not. The Sky Sports News guys who usually cover England football, for example, Premier League football, were turning up. National newspaper journalists. It was that for me is the strangest day I've ever had in 6 years of covering Welsh rugby as a professional journalist. It was just ridiculous. And then of course we have the troubles with Wales on the field, and the regions, and there's debate over whether they're going to cut to one or not. And Welsh rugby is eventful at the best at times, but this season is has taken the mick a little bit, I think, hasn't it? Just hoping for a quiet 2024 after the World Cup, to be honest, or I'll be retiring early.
Well, we said when we started the pod, we said, do you think we'll be able to talk for an hour on Welsh rugby? Is there enough happening in Welsh rugby to talk for an hour?
And that was not enough, I don't think.
Well, there've been some weeks where we've been recording like 3 podcasts, just because you record something on a Monday night, and then by Wednesday it's all changed, and then it's all changed again by Friday, and it's just been an insane season. But do you think that this has been on the cards for a while? It's not this season. It's all come to a head this season, but it's been building, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been building for the best part of. I think you're probably going back to the Roger Lewis era, if I'm being totally honest. There were a lot of journalists, not just journalists, supporters, administrators at the time. When we were at the height of the first Scotland era, winning Grand Slams, and the WIU were posting record profits, a lot of people were saying, okay, well, it's all well and good posting record profits, but it's pointless doing that if you're not going to put it back into the game. And everything was so top heavy, and a lot of a few journalists and people were saying, if you're neglecting everything underneath, and if you don't start really investing in the game underneath the the national team, then the rot's eventually going to spread, and the rot has spread. Here we are. At the end of the day, I think it goes back to that. There's an argument that we've been paying players too much. Whether that stands up to scrutiny, yes or no, but it goes back to those days where Wales were doing really well, selling the stadium out, winning Grand Slams, and they thought they were better than what they were, and then it ignored everything else underneath. And we got to remember that all credit to Gatland and Edwards, great coaches, but they had the best crop of players Wales have had since the 1970s. It'd have been very difficult not to have won Grand Slams. Wales has a small player pool, but that era had more depth than any other Welsh team since the 70s. Always not going to have the depth of England, South Africa, etc. By nature, we had the players. They were, everything was really top heavy, but it gets to a stage where you put all your eggs into one basket and you ignore everything else, and then it just catches up with you. And I think we're now paying the price for some poor decisions made during the Roger Lewis era.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely. And you mentioned Warren Gatland there, Steff. He was talking to the media this week, and the big headline to come out of that interview with Scrum 5 was he admitted he wouldn't have returned to the Wales job had he known the true scale of the problems in Welsh rugby. So what he actually said was this, and I quote, "When I came into the Six Nations, I had no idea. I didn't realise a lot of the things that were going on and the issues that were behind rugby in the squad and the players. At the time, if I had known, I would have made a different decision and probably gone elsewhere." Was you surprised at that, Steff? Did Gatland was so publicly admitting that, hey, if I known it was this bad, I wouldn't have come back?
Yeah, very surprised. I think he did allude to it during the Six Nations. He didn't know it was this bad. Obviously, I can't speak for Warren Gatland, but you only have to type into Google Welsh rugby and a list of things would have come up. He'd been in Wales for 12 years. He had so many contacts in Wales. So I'd like to know why he wasn't aware of all these problems. But he's here now. He's been a world-class coach, and we just hope that he can, because what Gatland is very good at is getting the best. He's a good tournament coach, especially. He creates a very strong environment. These training camps have been. He's a very smart coach. These training camps have been very they've done wonders in the past, and also what people don't. I was actually talking. I won't name names. I was talking to a former senior international recently retired, and he said that you would be absolutely amazed how much you can change in a 3-month training camp that's uninterrupted, just the small details, because you can't actually coach that much during the Six Nations, because you got play. That's why we want play. I'm going off on tangent here, but that's why we want players.
That's fine.
That's why we want players based in Wales, because of access. You're sending players back to their English clubs or the French clubs on Fala weekends, and they, obviously that's not ideal anyway. But they're again playing different styles of rugby and stuff, and you kind of have to trust your senior players. You actually, the real work is done in the 2-week training camp, 13 days to 14 days leading up to the Six Nations. You don't actually coach that much in a week. Every international coach will say that you don't coach that much in the week of test match. So to have nigh on 3 months of uninterrupted access, I think Wales probably be much improved at the World Cup. But just to go back to your original question, yeah, I'm pretty surprised he didn't know that how bad the problems were in Wales.
Yeah, it just seems a bit naive, doesn't it? He must have had some idea. I mean, maybe he probably didn't have a full understanding when the allegations of the misogyny and sexism came out, but he knew full well that the success of the national team was papering over the cracks, because he'd been in Wales for long enough to know this.
Yeah.
So it just seemed a little bit naive, but I was very surprised he actually went public with it.
But I mean, in terms of papering over the cracks, that's a compliment to Gatland and Edwards, really, that they were able to do that. But at the same time, as I went back to my first point, people do forget the quality of player Wales had. Wales dominated. I know you could say that Gatland was the coach, but Wales dominated Lion selection for about 3 straight tours. Even in 2009 when McGeechan was head coach, I know Gatland was his assistant, they dominated. Ireland won the Grand Slam, but there were more Welsh players there. They won Grand Slam after Grand Slam. Obviously there were some odd years where they were mediocre, but in the main they had a fantastic pool of players, and people criticize the regions, and a lot of it is valid, but they produced those players. They came through the regions. Yes, Gatland had to, he played a significant part in their development as well. But he did a great job last time. But also we need to balance it out with the fact that we had some fantastic players, and you'd have to say the profile of this current squad isn't as strong a profile as previous squads in terms of the jury's out in terms of quality. But also in terms of experience. So I would say that this is one of the biggest challenges of his career, really. And he's got it all to prove as well, because he wasn't a successful time in Super Rugby with the Chiefs. Obviously, very difficult Lions to South Africa world champions, and the COVID situation. So I don't want to be too harsh there, but obviously they lost that tour narrowly. But look, he's been a world-class coach. He's still a very good coach, but I think he's got a lot to prove. And this is the biggest challenge of his career, I think.
Yeah. So Wayne Pivac lost his job because of a poor a poor year, really. But I mean, I think the writing was on the wall, isn't it? When you lose in a calendar year to both Italy and Georgia, you're in big trouble. And it's strange to see, I really wanted Wayne Pivac to do well. And let's not forget, he won a Six Nations. People can call it the Jam Slam, but the fact of the matter is, he won a Six Nations. He came very close out in South Africa to winning a historic test. We did win a test in South Africa for the first time ever. It was inevitable that Pivac was going to eventually go. But do you think it was the right decision by the WRU to go back to Gatland, Steff, or do you think we should have looked for someone a bit fresh, someone to come in outside of Welsh Rugby with maybe new ideas?
I think in terms of Pivac, there were some lean years under Gatland last time, but he never stooped to a level where we were losing against tier 2 nations at home and losing to Italy. And Italy played well that day and they're improving. That was unacceptable. He was given a second chance, but to lose, to lose at home to Georgia, it's just totally unacceptable. It's like going back to the 1990s. And I think any top tier nation would have dispensed with the services of their head coach if that had happened. But the problem Pivac had, talking to a lot of players, is that there was a lack of clarity A lot of players say. I won't name names. There was a lot of confusion in terms of the tactics. You know, when he started, there was this. People forget that a lot of the public wanted Pivac. Most of the public actually wanted Pivac to be head coach because of the style of rugby the Scarlets were playing. But there was this promise that he was going to play this open style of rugby. Doesn't work like at a test level, to be honest.
The Scarlets way, wasn't there? That's what they all said. They wanted to bring Scarlets way into the test arena. And like you said, sometimes it's hard to make that transition.
Ironically, the successful games that Pivac had, they almost reverted to Warren ball. Not identical, but very similar. So that was a big issue. And I think his selection policy as well. I'm going to be controversial here, and I think people are going to have a go.
Like you, Steff.
Have a go at me on social media, but I think Arlywyn Jones. I think he made a mistake keeping Arlywyn Jones on. I think they should have.
Dropped him earlier.
One area where Gatland is absolute world class, and he always has been. He knows when to stick or twist. He knows when an international player has got a little bit more in the tank. He knows the difference between when a player's out of form and when he can get that form, or when a player's totally spent. He's always been a tremendous judge of whether a player can still cut to the test level. You can criticize his tactics or whatever, but he's a very smart coach. And I think you look at some of the performances. Alan Wynne was able to play really well here and there, and they'd never say this publicly, but there are a lot of pretty average performances the last few years, and you just think that, well, if you'd given Dav Jenkins an extra 10 caps, or if you'd looked at this player and that player, Rhys Davies, he's an excellent regional player. Is he a test player? Not sure. Gut says yes. He could have maybe an extra 10 caps. That makes all the difference. There's certain other players as well that you think maybe you should have been braver, Wayne, and you should have maybe gone for youth, taken a bit of a hit. I understand why you didn't do that, but I think that Gatland is paying the price for that a little bit. If you hear the way Gatland talks, obviously he's a winner. He wants to do well in the World Cup in 2023. But I think there's a lot of talk about 2027 as well. And you look at the 2011 World Cup, Foxy and Robert, centre partnerships. They played a lot together. 2015, you had Foxy and Roberts again. Scott Williams, very good player. 2019, Parks and Davis. Jonathan Davis, Foxy. They had a telepathic understanding, but no, it was a established centre partnership like Darcy and O'Driscoll and that sort. I'm not saying as good, but that type of thing. But no, you look at the centres and there's a lot of talent there. But I couldn't tell you who Wales' first choice centre partnership is, and that's it could shock a few teams, perhaps go under the radar. But there's a lot of positions where there's a lack of cohesion, perhaps from the Wayne Pivac era, and that's a challenge that Gatland hasn't had in World Cups before because he spent years sort of building a squad. So to answer your question, I think they're probably right to get rid of Wayne Pivac. I like Wayne. I think he did a good job with the Scarlets, and I think it's really, really sad because I really wanted him to do well because he was tremendous, with probably the best coach I've dealt with in the press. But I think it's unacceptable to lose a home to Fiji and Italy and Georgia, and you got to make a choice. Is Gatland the right man? I think he's probably the only real option on an interim basis. In terms of the long run, I think the jury's out. I think a lot depends on this World Cup. I still think he's got a lot to prove. People will say, you're ungrateful. He's done so well in the past, and he has done well. But as I said, his recent record isn't as strong as it was, and he probably does need to prove that he can get. Obviously, he needs to prove this Welsh team can get back on track. I don't think the forwards are as strong as they were. That's another thing. Wales on paper had a very, very good pack. Where there were games where they bullied South Africa in the first, Gatland era. I don't think they can play that way. He needs to show he has the ability to change the way Wales play. So I think the narrative is that he'd be staying on to 2027. But if I was chief executive, I would take a step back. But they haven't got one of them now. That's the next point, isn't it? They need a chief exec. But I would take a step back. I'd see how the World Cup goes, and I'd assess my option, and I'd speak to a lot of coaches and a lot of people, because my gut tells me you need a younger, innovative coach that Wales can build a team around for the next 4 years, maybe a World Cup cycle, 2 World Cup cycles. He probably wouldn't touch Wales with a barge pole, but somebody like Ronan O'Gara, the game has evolved. That he wants the island job, obviously, but that type of thing. So I'm not saying no. I think he was a right choice on an interim basis. Is he the right choice to take Wales to 2027 World Cup? Jury's out.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I think you're right there about, the game has kind of evolved beyond Gatland. For a long time, he was quite innovative. We had a very set structure. Everybody knew what was happening. It was very easy to play. You didn't have to think too much about the game, and you became used to, as a Welsh fan, you became used to, the game's always going to come down to the last 10 minutes, and in the last 10 minutes, we'll nick a try, and that'll be the game. And, and the amount of games that we won in the last 10, 15 minutes sort of a thing was, you lose count. And I think people like Ireland in particular kind of developed beyond that. The Ireland used to play a very structured game, and they took the structured game and they evolved it and they evolved it and they built players around it. And I think that's where we failed. We didn't evolve, not just Gatland, not just Wales, but, regions and even below regions, that development thing. We just went, look, we're great. Look, we can win Six Nations, we can win Grand Slams. So that's not an easy fix, is it? It's not an easy.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. We were winning Grand Slams. And we all, all Welsh Rugby deserved huge credit. But what were the All Blacks? I know they've gone off the boil last few years. They'll be back, obviously. But they've. I remember Sean Fitzpatrick. I remember somebody asked him about 10 years ago about him being the best. Because when he played, he was the best hooker in the world. And he said he used to prepare all the time. He used to tell his team something like, maybe I'm getting this a bit wrong, but the general gist was we always prepared, him personally as well, like they were number 2 in the world. Because what works one year won't work the next year. Because when you win stuff, teams give you respect. They start to respect you a lot more. A good example of that is when the Scarlets won the league. They beat Leinster in Dublin, phenomenal achievement. They probably did catch them a bit cold. They probably did. Leinster would underestimate them a little bit, but that's their problem. They were a very, very good team, Scarlets, back then. And in that semi-final, when they got stuffed in the Champions Cup, somebody told me that Stuart Lancaster was talking to one of the Scarlets coaches, and he was said something along the lines of, we didn't respect you last year, and that's what beat us. But that performance was out of respect for you, and teams start to respect you, and you have to change. The Scarlets didn't change. Obviously, they played the same way. It didn't work. Didn't work. For 2 years it worked, then the third year it didn't. So it's a similar thing. And I'm not saying, Gatland does evolve and to an extent, and there is little changes and stuff. And I'm not, he is a top end, he's a world-class coach, but things change. And, his mantra is always, this summer, they'll be a lot fitter. There'll be a huge emphasis on fitness. And it's when things haven't worked, it's a bit like the old South African mantra. When things don't work for Gatland's Wales, obviously they tinker there, but it's almost like some coaches in other nations or other clubs would change the game plan. But for him, it's, right, you didn't execute the game plan good enough. We're going to do the same again, but we're going to do it better. And that's fine. It's worked for him. But we perhaps didn't evolve as a game. The pathways and the academies and stuff, it's the talent. There's some raw talent there, but it's dried up a bit. Look at the Welsh Premiership. At one time it was developing players, and it was sort of a good conveyor belt of talent, but that dried up about 10 years ago, and they've done nothing about it. But they are going to soon. You'll find out soon. Don't know if I can say it on this, but there is going to be a competition in between the Premiership and regional level, for example. So to be fair, the WRU are starting to change stuff, but I think the point you made, Lee, is absolutely relevant. That spot on. That we got complacent. We started to believe our own press a little bit, and as I said, everything underneath test level was neglected, and the rot has spread. Here we are.
So we've come out of the autumn internationals, and everybody's down in the dumps, and then we sack a coach, bring a new coach in, and we have a bit of Christmas, and we have a bit of fun over Christmas, and then we hit January, and it was weird because we were interviewing David Buttress that night, and we'd seen the adverts for the BBC documentary. So we were interviewing David Buttress, and it was literally the documentary started about 10 minutes before we finished recording, sort of a thing. So it was I think it hit Wales. Like I said, it had been kind of prompted before, people had spoken about it, but not in the terms that we saw in there. And I think it hit everyone in a massive, and I think the ironically, well, not ironically, but rightfully, the people that have come out of this best is the women's team, because people are actually sitting up and watching the women's team now. What did you make? How much sleep did you get that week? Put it that way.
Oh, not much. Not much. Yeah, I did. Yeah, didn't get much sleep. But all I was thinking about was, during the sexism allegations, how awful it was, and obviously then you had the whole thing with the players' contract freeze and the strike which nearly happened. It was pretty hectic, to be honest, and that's an understatement. That documentary was a very good piece of journalism, despite some accusations contrary to that. I think I don't work for the BBC, so I got no reason to defend them. Look, obviously a lot of them are allegations which haven't been proven. Well, in terms of the public domain yet. But if those allegations are true, we've all seen the documentary. People, a member of staff allegedly joking. I don't know how this can be a joke about raping another member of staff and a senior member of staff being present and ignoring it. Obviously not proven yet, but if that's true, that is abhorrent. And all those involved, including those who did nothing, should be sacked. I'm not going to, no point, but papering over those cracks. But they are just allegations at the moment. But there's obviously issues within the Welsh Rugby Union, cultural issues which need to be solved. To be fair, to Nigel Walker, he has been given a really he's been given a shit hand. I don't know if I can swear on this, but
no, that's kind. Yeah, on.
No, he has. He has been given a really difficult hand. To be fair to him, so he has apologised, and they pushed the governance changes through, which is historic, a huge step in the right direction. I think the appointment of Richard Collier Keywood as the new independent chair, look at his CV, hugely impressive. That's a step in the right direction. And obviously hopefully this task force led by Damon Rafferty, who, let's face it, is a big hitter, will take no prisoners, will root out all the the bad eggs in the Welsh Rugby Union, and they'll get rid of them, and they'll help change the culture, and it'll be a place where women and any person, doesn't matter about gender or religion or anything like that, can just be happy and just work hard, and there'd be no bullying or anything like that. So obviously these things still got to be proven, but hopefully the Rafferty can help solve a lot of issues. Problem as well, we got this period now. It's a period of austerity in Welsh Rugby. And the issue I've got is I just feel that, some tough decisions need to be made. And a lot of people involved high up at the union, the next chief executive, whether it's Nigel Walker or somebody else, they need to do some really unpleasant things for the greater good. They need to answer some serious questions. Can we afford 4 professional teams? Probably not on looking at the balance sheets. I was talking to somebody really high up in sports administration today, nothing to do with rugby, really high up in football. And this person said to me, you can't save yourself to glory. And that's what he was talking, because he's a big Welsh Rugby fan. You can't save yourself to glory. So they're cutting. And yes, they've got to reset things. But at the end of the day, I mean, as you say, you've got to grow revenue. How are you going to? It's all well and good cutting stuff, but in terms of getting back on the right track, how are you going to do that? The problem is Welsh Rugby faces a race against time. It hasn't got time at 6-year financial framework. I haven't got 6 years. Rugby Union is not the chat of the average man or woman in the pub anymore. I don't think most people would be talking about football, whereas 10, 20 years ago, it'd have been different. Success of the national football team obviously has been a part of that, and also their branding and the way they they engage and reach out to they're not out of touch. So if you get a situation where the regions or the pro clubs, whatever you want to call them, get worse and worse and worse and worse, and they cut, well, people are going to turn away from it. They're not just competing with soccer. There's other things. People do. You got die-hard fans, but this is going to sound perverse. A lot of them will die, etc., etc. And they'll turn away. And you go to a lot of these regional games, and how many there are teenagers, 14 to 18, people in their early 20s. Obviously, there are some, but not near enough in comparison to what you get in the Gallagher Premiership or Swansea City, Cardiff City. And I used to cover Newport County a lot when I worked for Westgate. There's and then go to the Dragons, and it's totally different demographic. It's a worry. It hasn't got 6 years. Yes, I agree that we probably spent too much on wages, and we need to go through a little bit of pain. But I want these people to answer, like, how are we going to grow revenue? What sponsorship deals are you going to get Welsh Rugby back on track? Can you sell the naming rights for the stadium? That's up soon. Is there any way we can remortgage a stadium? It's a really, really difficult job for Nigel Walker, and I agree with a lot of things he's done. I disagree with other things. That he's obviously a very capable guy. I got a lot of respect for him, but whether it's him or somebody else, I just think some questions still need answering. I think over the last few weeks, we probably have taken some steps in the right direction. Obviously, the independent chair and this review and stuff, of course, but there are still things that need pushing forward. Like, I totally agree with what the union are doing in terms of, I spoke to Hugh Bevan the other day, lovely guy, he's quite impressive. He said it's a real plan for the pathways and the development system, which had been neglected a bit over the last 4 or 5 years. Again, that back on track, some really good plans there for the women's game and the men's game. He wants more players and better players, and hopefully that will come to fruition in the long run. So it's not all negative. I don't want to, there's a lot of stuff that they deserve credit for, but there's still a lot of unanswered questions, and it's just that whole thing. I just don't think we got 6 years to fix it. We need to fight. They need to find a way to grow revenue and to put more money into the game, and that may mean cutting a team. A lot of people would agree with me privately on that. So yeah, it's going to be difficult the next couple of seasons, but I think the appointment of the next chief executive is absolutely critical. It all hinges on that.
Yeah, Nigel Walker did say this week that he's committed, or the WRU are committed to 4 teams. It's interesting what you're saying. Sam Davis, the former Dragons fly-half, in an interview with Wales Online, funny enough, he was saying that 4 regions he doesn't think is viable. And my question to you was, I suppose you already answered in a way, but there's a 6-year framework, isn't there, for the regions with the funding agreement. Do you think we'll still have 4 teams in the next 6 years, in your opinion? Will we still plod on with 4, or do you think there is a genuine threat of one of these teams going?
It depends who's chief executive, to be honest. The biggest threat, so you'd look at the behaviour, and I don't mean this in a bad way, it's probably not the right word to use, but the narrative coming out of the current executive and some of the people at the union, it's about, there's been a lot of upheaval. There's been a lot of criticism. There's the people are throwing haymakers in all directions in the world of politics, women's rights, etc., and in the rugby world. I don't think they've got a stomach for a fight. Nigel Walker isn't David Moffat, rightly or wrongly. He's a talented. He's obviously very capable. I got a lot of respect for him, but I don't think I'm not convinced he's the man to make those sort of decisions. But what could happen is, might be a lot of cash flow problems over the next 18 months. Could one team go to the wall, naturally? It's possible, but perhaps, maybe they'd have gone by now, because obviously they've got that loan they need to pay back. And it's amazing, really. 3 teams in England have gone to the wall, and it's amazing how a Welsh team hasn't given everything. Obviously, they're cutting back, obviously to make the businesses more sustainable and whatnot. So I agree with that, Pat. It's more that what are you going to do to get them back up, sort of thing, is my question. So I've seen like the agreement that they've signed, and there's a lot of you say 4, right? You say that they're committed to 4, but a lot of people high up in Welsh Rugby think that there needs to be, we only got money for 3 teams. In an ideal world, everybody keep 4, or even have more teams. But we haven't got enough players, and you could argue we haven't got enough money either. I say not enough players. obviously we have because we got 4 teams, but some would argue, and again, I'll be abused for this probably, but some players you could argue, are they real top-end professional players? Jury's out, you make your own mind up. But basically, in this new deal, there's a lot of clauses. You get in for this, and that. You're getting X amount of money per region. But if we go down to 3 teams, you're getting this, and that. And in every clause, but if you go down to 3 teams, you're getting this amount, and this amount. But if we go down to 2 teams, again, this, and this. So obviously it's something that they've thought about. But to answer your question, it is going to depend on the next chief executive, what he and she has, what their philosophy is. And also the Dragons going private as well. Obviously I rate David Buttress really highly. He's somebody I think they should really look at, to be honest, to be the chief executive of the Welsh Rugby Union. I think he'd be a good fit. The only problem would be obviously he'd be the people would always associate him with the Dragons and whatnot. But I think he's a real asset to Welsh Rugby. I wouldn't want to lose him. But if the Dragons go private, I think there'll be a big step in the right direction to them.
Absolutely.
For them. The problem is, like, if you look at Sale Sharks in England, right, they're trying desperately to buy their stadium, to buy the stadium they play in fully, so that they can make money off not just ticket sales and replica shirts and merchandise and stuff, but non-match day income, food, beer, all that sort of thing. So the teams that own their own grounds or have a long lease on their grounds where they make non-match day income, not just, there are some teams who lose money from playing games. Those are the ones who are more stable. Which is why I'm glad to hear that the Ospreys are considering St Helens, although that will take a long time. So there's each region's got their own problems. Cardiff have got terrible problems, but they're in the capital city and whatnot. But I just think I'm going round and round in circles. But to answer your question, it's going to depend on the next chief executive. But it's not the answer that you probably want to hear. But there probably isn't enough money for 4 teams, in my opinion.
That's why he accepted, Steff, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I think that's why he accepted, isn't it?
Yeah.
But if you think...
sorry, go on.
So, if you think, like, when go back to when Pivac came in, he had the opportunity to have a bit of a clear out and say, right, let's start and let's build again. And he didn't take it and he paid the price. So the next chief exec that comes in has to have that kind of attitude and has to go, do you know what? Even if they build from the ground up, and I think this is half the problem with the WRU at the minute, is they don't explain what they're trying to do until it's there. It's just like, right, okay, yeah, we've been trying to do this, and boom, it's there. And they're not really fully explaining, we're going to look at the school game, we're going to look at club game at junior level, and we're going to build pathways that do this, and this, and to do that we need X amount of coaches that can provide this. Do you know what I mean? We just kind of, there's no connection between the WRU and the people, and so whoever comes in is straight away on a real tough job, because there's no way of anything they say is just going to be taken and spun, and you know yourself the way social media works. Somebody will find a way of laying a boot in, and so you kind of need somebody to come in, like you say, that'll go, right, okay, everybody shut up, listen, this is the 5-year plan, the 6-year plan, whatever it is, but this is what we're going to do, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do that, and we're all going to go together, and this is what we're going to do. That's a bit of a nightmare.
The only thing I would say, though, about the question of 4 regions, we could have 4 regions, or we wouldn't be having this discussion if the WRU actually funded the pro game properly. This is a really important point, because we should be doing it. We can't, people say, let's copy the Irish model. We can't, for a number of reasons. Okay. No. But what we could be doing, what we should have done years ago, is to invest properly in the pro game and spend the same amount of money as the Irish do in their pro game, because they properly nurture it, they properly fund it, and we haven't. And this is the result now of chronic underfunded to the pro teams, where we're now having to say, well, there isn't enough money, when actually there has been, but it hasn't been properly invested because they want to put it in capital projects.
Yeah,
and it should be going to the pro game.
I think you're absolutely spot on. I agree with you 100%. I think I feel a bit sorry for Nigel Walker at the moment because he is living with the legacy of those that came before him, and not sure the money's there now to fund Welsh Rugby to those levels, but I think they were there in the Roger Lewis era.
Yeah.
Let's face it, Martin Phillips tried his best, did a good job, as did Gareth Davis, but the clubs didn't want to know that, they were victim to the governance, I think. And people who, quite frankly, don't have a clue how to run a business, telling a hugely successful businessman, an administrator, how to do his job. It's like me trying to tell a doctor how to amputate a limb. It's just moronic. So there was that. But I think we go back to that era where the IIU were making a lot of money, winning Grand Slams. That should have gone back into the game.
Yeah,
to be honest,
that's my point.
So Nigel, and you're absolutely right. So Nigel is living with the legacy of that, and the next chief executive is, because obviously COVID has come and that's put everything on. That's ruined everything, and the loan and stuff, which the union probably should have taken on themselves. You could argue. They will say otherwise, but there is that argument. But also, as Lee said, they need to be transparent, because the questions I'm asking, like, I agree with some of the stuff Nigel Walker says about you need to get reset stuff. And I'm asking the question, but what are you going to do to get the regions back up? How are you going to make more money? Maybe he's got that sussed, and I know you can't say everything to people, but they need to be a lot more transparent about everything, I feel. And that's something they need to do. And I'm getting the feeling that you like controversy on this podcast. So
makes you say that, Steff.
It's something that annoys me, like this next point. But can we touch on the 25 cap law?
Please do. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go. I got a can of worms here, so I'm opening it. So look, there's a lot of people on social media, right? And they
I know.
They misunderstand. They absolutely, Facebook's worse, mind. They absolutely.
It's true. It's true.
Don't look into fucking.
Wales online comments.
I work.
Do you
can't.
ever read the comment section at all of your articles?
I made a mistake of reading one today. So I did a story saying the Scarlets had targeted the signing of Tame Plumtree. For anyone listening, they haven't signed him yet, but they targeted him whatever, right? So hopefully that happens, and it's be good for Wales as well, because he's a good player, he's Welsh qualified. So then I was reading underneath, and there was this bloke. I'm thinking I should name him, because after he started on the Ospreys fans forum, right? It's I haven't seen anything like it. Like, there's this bloke, right, and he's I don't know whether I should name him or not, and.
Go on, name him. Let's name and shame him. Let's do it.
I'll get accused of bullying, right? Even though he's trying to bully me, really. But I just laugh at the stupidity. But anyway, under every article on Wales Online on the Ospreys forum, there's a topic saying a journalist acting as a propagandist, and it's all about me, and they call me Scarlet Nut and all that sort of thing. And there's this bloke after every article. He's a Scarlet Nut. He's I don't know if I can say this word. He's a retard all the time. He keeps calling me that, which I think is quite offensive, to be honest. Even that word. Yeah. And F in this F, and every Wales Online article and stuff. And this is a man with kids and stuff. Because I know most Ospreys fans are really good, and they've come to me and they said, look, this bloke's looks an absolute moron, he's trying to bully you, and it's just ridiculous. And half the other people then, they got fake names and stuff. And it's just like, and then you look at their Twitter accounts, they're all Brit Nats and all that sort of thing, GB News. Yeah. I'm just like, ridiculous. And the vast majority of Ospreys fans are fantastic. Like, a lot of my friends are like that, and there's fans that go with every team. But and then there was just one fan who said, I watch every Ospreys press conferences online, and every time Mark orders, which is when I was with Westgate, my ex Wales Online colleague, the best journalist I've worked with, Mark Orders, great guy. Every time he asks the question, Toby Booth indulges him and he gets along with him. But once Steffan Thomas, aka Scarlet Nut, opens his mouth, he looks at him with deadly seriousness, because he knows the dwarf is poisonous. And I'm thinking, like, I didn't know it was our shot, mate. So, it's just ridiculous. I'm just reading these. And I'm thinking, this is a grown man in his 50s, like, with kids. It's just nuts. But anyway, on to the 25 cap law.
That was a tangent to the half, wasn't it?
A lot of people, they misunderstand, and I feel I need to explain it. They're like, leave the players go where they want to go. They need to earn their money, and that's fair, absolutely fair. But number one, Wales is an invitational team, and they think I have no issue with leave the players. They deserve to earn money, more money. Absolutely fine. Totally agree. You can improve as a player playing abroad. Absolutely, totally agree. 110%. That's absolutely fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I hate the argument because it's just wrong when people say we need all the players we can get. But if you didn't have a cap law, you wouldn't have all these players because, as I said earlier, and any coach will tell you this, the real preparation work in terms of tactics and detail is done in the 2-week training camp leading up to the Six Nations. If you had over half your players were playing in England and France, you have to send on a test week, you have to send players, you have to pick your team on the Tuesday, and you have to send players who aren't in your match day 23 back to their respective clubs. And obviously they go back for the whole following weeks. How on earth can you be successful at test level like that? Ireland have all their players playing in Ireland, and the cohesion is there. Everything is there. They know each other inside out. And so leaving players play wherever they want to, in terms of England, France, etc., is going to significantly lessen our chances of being successful at international level. It's going to really, really lower it. Players can go where they want. Absolutely got a right to that. But Wales are an invitation team. They can select who they want to select. And if you want to play for Wales, this is what you have to do. You have to play in Wales, or you have to have a certain amount of caps and play in Wales. Obviously, they can't take the piss. They have to pay them properly. But the 60 cap law, as it was, I would have probably, because of the current situation, put it to 40 maybe. I don't think I would have gone down to 25. I totally feel for the players, absolutely. But if you don't have a cap law, I think you can forget about being successful at test level. Obviously, if you had more money and you paid them more to stay in Wales, that's a different matter. But, if Gatland, Wales probably be better at the World Cup because Gatland will have had uninterrupted access to his players. But you have over 50%, 60% of your players playing outside of Wales during the Six Nations, and you lose them, as I just described. How the hell do you expect to be successful? I remember Wayne Pivak being asked about why didn't you pick Tommy Reffel, because he wasn't first choice and he'd have only been available for 25% of training sessions, including the camp. That's there. I mean, why don't people take this on board? So it's a nuanced debate, but there has to be a cap law, and it's there not to benefit the regions, it's to benefit the national side first and foremost in access, and also in terms of the regional game. You would want kids, you want successful professional teams. If I have children, I want my children to be able to watch the best Welsh players playing week in, week out at the Scarlets, Cardiff, Ospreys, whatever the teams are then, and you want them to be successful in their own right. So I just feel you have to have a cap law. I think it's absolutely integral.
The one comment that annoys me, and I'm sure it annoys you when you see people talk about this on Twitter, Steff, is when they say it's a restricting the trade.
It's not.
And you're like, no, it's not, because we're an invitational side.
It's like
not a restriction.
It's like playing for the Barbarians, isn't it? It's like playing for the Barbarians, and obviously you get paid to play for Wales as well. So,
but also Wales are not the only nation to have a law. I mean, Ireland don't select anyone outside of Ireland. New Zealand don't select anyone outside, and neither do England. Now you can argue about the player pools, but the point stands. We're not the only ones.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. There needs to be some. It needs to be some compromise, of course. It can't be hard and fast, but you just can't have a situation where all your players play outside of Wales. It's just you're not going to win international matches because of the calendar. It's not like football.
Yeah. But the idea as well, I will debunk this idea about it strengthening our regions as well. I think that's a red herring, because at the end of the day, they don't play enough for their regions. And the whole reason it's brought in is for full access the Wales players. Warren Gatland wants our access. So when I hear people say, "Oh yeah, keep the law because it strengthens our regions," it doesn't really. Does it? It's there to benefit Team Wales and Warren Gatland. That's the truth, isn't it, Steff?
I think you're right. It depends on the player, obviously, but if you have a serious international player, and it's not a criticism of the player, it's the calendar, isn't it? And you play international rugby is, I've never played it, obviously, but you're talking to players and they'll say it's fucking hard, That's why they call it test match rugby. That's why they call it test match rugby. It really it tests you. Gatland said on Scrum 5 podcast, Sean Ed, he's saying, referencing what Sean Edwards says, it tests you in every department, but not just physically, but mentally. And I remember covering the Ospreys, and they were playing Newcastle Falcons in I think it was the last 16 of the Challenge Cup behind closed doors, and the press officer gave the team sheets out. I looked at them and I thought, fucking hell, the Ospreys should be winning this game comfortably. British Lions everywhere. Only Mark Wilson, and I think was the only international playing for Newcastle. And the Ospreys came out like house on fire, 14-0 up. But then they started to malfunction. They were tired. They were emotionally drained. It was a week after the Six Nations. Newcastle, nowhere near as talented. Well coached by Dean Richards, shoved it up the jumper, played territory, cohesive team, play week in, week out, and they scraped a win. But the Ospreys players had figured heavily for Wales. They'd had a fantastic Six Nations, 21, I think, Six Nations winners. And they were, you could tell they were drained physically and emotionally, and they couldn't maintain, they needed a rest. And that goes back to, the underfunding then of the regions. And in many ways, you're better off with overseas players. And that's another bugbear of mine, A lot of players, people saying, why would you give the regions more money because they sign foreign players? Well, number one, would you imagine you went, right? Imagine you guys went to a car dealership and you said, all right, I'm going to rent 38 of your cars, right? I'm only going to pay you half price. They'd be like, get moving. That's what we're, three of them are independent businesses, and the WU are a customer in many ways, paying for the services of their players. Now, the regions have got to take some responsibility. They made some poor recruitment and poor appointments in coaches in the past. They've got to take some responsibility, absolutely, in terms of playing wages and stuff, of course. But that's that whole premise. They're not funded. It's payments. They're paid for the services of their players. They're independent business. Three Dragons hopefully will be. So they're independent businesses, and it's just that whole argument that the WU should give less and less money, and then you say, if they gave them more money, they'd spend on foreign players. Now, to begin with, there has been some poor recruitment of overseas players in Wales, and there's been a lot of journeymen. But I interviewed Paul James the other day, ex-Ospreys and Wales prop. Great guy. And it was a fun piece, looking back at his career, Lynn Jones's antics and all that sort of thing. And we went back to I asked him about the Ospreys Galacticos period. What was Jerry Collins like? And first of all, I was expecting more. I was trying to get out of the off the field stuff, like going out in the piss and that sort of thing. Gave me some really good stuff. But he made a good point. He said, unprompted, he said, look, I understand Welsh Rugby, might not be able to afford some of these players. And I get where the Welsh public are coming from. But Jerry Collins, Marty Hawler, Fio Tia were phenomenal for the Ospreys. Not just on the field winning games, the culture, they set the standard. When the internationals are away, they kept the season going. Justin Tipperick, I remember asking him in Ospreys press conference 5 years ago, but Marty Hawler, and he said, he's a making of him. He's a great player. Tipperick would have made it anyway. But they were nurturing these young players. They were great for the environment. Signing good caliber overseas players helps the development of Welsh players.
Yeah.
Right? And the Welsh regions, one thing the Welsh regions cannot be criticised for, it is a factually inaccurate claim that they do not push through young Welsh players. They can be criticised for a lot of things, poor signings, poor coaching recruitments, overpaying players, yes. But one thing they have always done, all four regions, is push through young Welsh players. But if you just put a lot of young Welsh players out there and they haven't got experience next to them and they're with Welsh internationals, and this is not a dig, who obviously a knocker after the Six Nations, and it's really tough, having to come back and forth all the time. But if you've got Marty Hawler, Thea Tia next to you, Xavier Rush for Cardiff, and you do something wrong, they'll tell you, they'll set the standard, and they'll show these young kids the way, and they'll mentor them. Having the right caliber of overseas players is absolutely vital, not just for the regions to perform and win games, but to the future development of young Welsh players, just throwing kids onto the field is not going to work. You need people there to mentor them.
Yeah.
And because the season is the way it is, those aren't going to be Welsh internationals. Not a criticism of them.
Yeah.
Great guys, vast majority of them, but the global calendar does not allow that, and they need to look after themselves as well. So it should be an aim of the WIU to help the regions get All Black, senior Springboks.
Yeah.
I think it's vital.
No, you're absolutely right, Steff. You made some brilliant points there. And what I would say to people, sorry to interrupt, but when people criticise about foreign players coming into Welsh Rugby, I would say that if you look at the successful periods, I'm not including Dragons this, unfortunately. I wish I could, but I can't. But when you look at Cardiff...
Name a successful Dragons period, Jim.
Well, we did reach an Anglo-Welsh final in 2010 or 11. Yeah, well, that's as good as it gets. But what I'm trying to say, calm down. What I'm trying to say is when you look at the successful eras of the Ospreys, the Scarlets, and Cardiff, you mentioned there Cardiff, Rush, Molatika, Ben Blair, Casey Lalala, Scarlets, we had John Barkley, Tag Byrne, you had the likes of Regan King. And Ospreys, like, just take your pick, wasn't it? Jerry Collins and Tommy Boat. They had all these Galacticos. It does help, doesn't it, having those good quality overseas players into our game. And the concern we have now is the WRU or the PRB. You might be able to explain it better than me, Steff. I understand now that when a region makes an approach for an overseas player, there has to be permission now. It has to be approved. And of course, the PRB or the WRU can reject it, like we've seen with Cardiff. They're trying to sign Tinas Dabia now, aren't they? South African fly off. They've said no. But then Dragons are also approaching Slabbert as well. He's a Curry Cup lock in South Africa.
Yeah.
And this opens a can of worms for me, because if you reject one, like, if Cardiff get their fly off rejected, but Cardiff get their South African lock approved, it does bring into question one rule for them and one rule for the other. And, you see people on Facebook and Twitter saying, play the kids, what's wrong with a young Welsh kid? Well, we're going to see that now. We're going to see it, and it's not going to go well, Steff, is it?
And throw an academy 10. So Cardiff threw Harry Wild in, who's in the 20s, could be playing for Wales under 18s, really highly rated. I haven't seen him myself, but everybody rates him highly. Well, is it responsible? Say they have an injury crisis, margin throwing him in, behind a pack against Stuffed, out in Leinster against the Stormers. God, he'll do damage, won't it? And it's nothing against him. He could be a potential world-class player, but you got to be sensible here. And in terms of the WIU giving permission, technically it's always been the case, because in terms of visas and stuff, in terms of Tinas Dabia, my contacts in South Africa don't particularly rate him. I'm going to be honest. So that could be a reason. But again, Cardiff, obviously, it's been well documented. The situation is hitting them a bit more acutely than the other teams.
Yeah,
because they had so many players in the NS38 and they have to pick up the tab, so that's obviously an issue. So obviously they can only afford a certain caliber of player, and at outside half they need bodies. It's all well and good telling Cardiff saying Gareth Anscombe, but if they can't afford him, they can't afford him, quite frankly.
No.
Same with somebody like, I think Callum Sheedy's in contract, but if they wanted to try and sign him, it'd be exactly the same. So it is a can of worms. I understand what you mean, because the WIU could say, like, to the Dragons, you can't sign this guy. They say to the Scarlets, you can't sign this guy. And then whether a player's good enough is a matter of opinion. It's up for interpretation, isn't it? It's a big can of worms. That I agree.
So in terms of signing players in, and we've seen this today with people coming from the Bucks League, and I've rated Bucks quite highly for the last couple of seasons. I think it's probably the place to recruit from now. How do you see that developing? Do you see that genuinely becoming the recruitment kind of area for sides going forward?
So I was speaking to this other journalist today. I don't like naming names, that covers it regularly. He thought he was a great development tool. The two players of Scarlett signed, Charlie Tidcombe, I don't want to pronounce his name wrong, and outside half, Bucks Player of the Year, and Teddy Leather Barrows in the Team of the Year. Apparently they're good prospects. And I was talking to some people in Welsh Rugby. There are some who are on the fence about it, and there are others who think that it is a good stepping stone. But I suppose you look at the stats, and a lot of players have gone to the Bucks League and are now established professionals. Alex John Brandt is the one they talk about. You got Luke Northmore at Quins as well, I think, isn't he? And there are other players that got. Obviously, a lot of players don't make it. Just because they've made it doesn't mean everyone's going to make it. But I do think, given the budgets are going down, they gotta look. Well, I know for a fact they're all looking closely at the Bucks League, Bucks Super League. It's a good stepping stone, a good coaching apparently. Like the Scarlets have got the head of academy and transitions, a guy called Scott Snedden. He was with Loughborough. Don't know him personally, but he's highly rated, for example. So I think they got to look at these leagues. I think the Welsh Premiership is a problem. A lot of good work goes on there, but I remember in 2003 when Welsh Rugby went regional, I remember Gareth Jenkins, who coached Scarlets, or Llanelli Scarlets as they were called then, saying at the time, I remember reading in the Wales on Sunday, he said the Welsh Premiership should be the most important league in Wales. It should be our version of the Mighty 10 Cup or whatever it was called then, New Zealand Provincial Championship, but it's not, is it? For many years, the start of it worked. It was a good breeding ground, but then you look at it now, I couldn't answer what is the Welsh Premiership for? What's its purpose? I can't answer that. And I'm a professional journalist. Some clubs just want to win games, and other clubs are developing players. Is it top of the community game? Is it part of the pro game? Thankfully, they are very close to announcing. I've reported on it. An elite 8-team league. I don't think they've settled on the figure yet. It could be more, could be less for the season after next. To bridge the gap between semi-professional and professional level. And crucially, this is the crucial point which people annoy me on social media. They don't understand. It'd be part of the professional rugby board, not the community game board.
Right, okay.
So it will take few years to build up, but they need that level in between, because getting rid of the old LV Cup at the start, it was a fully blown competition, wasn't it? Then you went into like a development team competition, and the Welsh teams were getting stuffed a lot of the time because the English teams have more depth. But like Josh Navid, he played his first few games at that level, and he's a good stepping stone, for example. So we need that again. Perhaps in the future they could expand it. And this is credit to the union. Spoke to Hugh Bevan about it the other day. Huge credit to the rugby management board, all the guys on that, and the WIU as well. For getting this so close, and hopefully this comes over the line soon. But there needs to be a step from between regional and semi-professional level, and maybe in the next few years they could even expand it and they could play in the Premiership Rugby Cup, for example. That's just an idea that I've thrown out there, but there does need to be this league in between. So in terms of the Bucks League, I think they will be looking at it very closely, and we're going to have to get more for the money we've got. We've got to maximise what we've got, and that's the key, I think.
I think the interesting bit for me is Cardiff Met used to play their first team. If you were in the first team at Cardiff Met, you played on a Saturday in the Welsh League, and your reserve team played in what was then the Bucks League, and now that's swapped. So the Cardiff Met senior team plays in the Bucks League, and the second team plays on a Saturday in the Premiership, or the Championship. Sorry, and I think that's really indicative of where they believe the future of rugby talent is, and I think the same is true of people like Hartbury, Exeter, places like that. They're all focused on the Bucks League now. So I wanted to ask a while ago. So in terms of controversy now, right? So brace yourself for social media on that now, right? Let's leave the URC and play in an Anglo-Welsh league now.
Well, this hasn't been discussed before, mind, has it?
do you want me to? I can give David Moffat a ring if you want to get him on now.
I mean, how many times do you see that kind of bandied around, and is it got any legs, or is it too far gone? Where do you see it as an option?
It's probably too far gone, I think. Obviously, a lot of people will read this and think, are you bonkers? The URC have got better teams. And the 3 teams in the English Premiership have gone to the wall. It could be more, potentially. But obviously, we know the reasons why Welsh fans want an Anglo-Welsh league is because they can travel to games home and away. There'll be more away support, etc., more tribalism. Yeah. Ironically, given the 3 teams have gone to the wall, they'd also be operating in a better ecosystem. They'd be able to attract more sponsorship, etc., etc., etc. But the Welsh problem is, the English Premiership is a club-run competition. whereas the URC is a union-run competition in the main. You know, it's difficult because obviously you've seen what rogue owners have done to Worcester, but there's been a lot of great owners. You know, I know Nigel Ray, obviously, Saracens got relegated, etc., because the salary cap breach, but he's done a hell of a lot for the game there. There are other people as well. You had Cecil Duckworth before, and those sort of guys. So the private ownership does work a lot of the time as well. So you can't just judge on these three teams going bust. But I think it's probably too far gone. I think it'd be a brave step from the WIU to approach the English Premiership, and the Prem would say, "What can you bring to the table?" The Union would say, but again, I'm contradicting myself because they don't like unions in PRL. So the PRB would have to do it, some representative, and they'd like, "What can you bring?" We'd be like, "Oh, well, we can bring 3 or 4 teams. You can have, more fixtures, etc." Perhaps, but I just think it's up to CVC. I think the more likely scenario is that because of English rugby's problems, and obviously one thing the URC doesn't have is a salary cap, which is a big problem. Almost impossible to have that because it's intercontinental, let alone, or cross-continental, let alone, cross-border. Whereas in England, we'd be close to their salary cap. So when people say regions won't compete in the Premiership, they have a better chance of competing there in many ways than the URC. But I think that the more realistic one would be that a lot of the club owners walk away because they're throwing their money down a black hole because they don't make money in rugby, and the union take them over. There's some sort of mishmash, and then CVC want to bring them both together, and the Welsh teams can go into an English conference, Anglo-Welsh conference. I could see that in 4 or 5 years' time, maybe. But in terms of an Anglo-Welsh league, I'd like to say yes, but I think probably it's gone too far for that now, I think.
Yeah, I think we had our chance in the 90s, didn't we?
So.
When, we all know the story. There were several clubs. It was 5 or 6 clubs, I think.
Yeah,
and if you offered them, and we said no. And
we thought we were better than what we were. Again, we thought Welsh Rugby was better than what it was, and nobody had the vision to foresee the problems that were coming in the professional era.
But the fact of the matter is, that is the worst ever mistake in Welsh Rugby, as far as I'm concerned.
I fully agree.
It's a howler, massive howler. Right, let's talk about Wales World Cup. The preparations have been interesting, Steff, haven't they? It's not exactly been the most ideal build-up. So what did you make of it all? Like, the players pulling out, obviously, Rhys Carey was a big talking point. That statement, I'd like to get your thoughts as well, what you thought about that statement, because everyone's got different opinions on that, and where you think Wales will finish in the World Cup. Can we get out of our pool? Because that's not a given, Fiji and, of course, Georgia and Australia. It's a really tough pool. So what do you make of our chances then? And what have you think of it so far?
I got to be careful here because in a few weeks I'm going out to Switzerland and to the training camp for a few days.
Oh, right.
I probably said too much already, and I'm probably going to get lynched. But no, I think in terms of Rhys Carey, I'm on the fence about it. I think I agree with Warren Gatland. I think Rhys Carey's got the potential to be a world-class player. I think he's got the raw attributes to be a world-class player. He can carry. That's something we don't have. He's explosive carrier. Scrummaging is a work in progress, but it's getting better. Warren Gatland's within his right to select who he wants to select. He's ultimately a better judge than all of us. Not purely because he's a professional rugby coach, but because he sees his players in the flesh day in, day out. And, he answered it very well on the Scrum 5 podcast, didn't he? He said...
He did, yeah.
Many senior players, years over years have been given, real work-ons after the Six Nations or an autumn camp, and they've always met them. And if he hasn't met that, then... professional sports, isn't it? Gatland's got every right to do it. I think he needs to be back there. I think in terms of it's controversial, isn't it? But I think in terms of the statement, I think I would agree with Gareth Rhys-Owen what he said on the podcast. I think
he should have come from Gatland himself.
Yeah, I think there should have been words there. There should have been a press conference. My argument would be, I understand where the union are coming from, where Gatland's coming from. I understand where some journalists are coming from, and fans. It's a difficult one. But in terms of or throwing him out of the squad, you've got to trust Gatland as the head coach. End of. He sees him play. If he hasn't met his targets, he's got every right to do that. And he wants to set out to stall, but the culture, you back Gatland. However, I think it was a blunt statement. It was very blunt. It left it. He didn't meet the target set for him after the Six Nations, etc., etc. Leaves it open to interpretation. A lot of people could have thought, "Oh, has he done something?" Because I thought that. First thing I've heard privately the reasons. I can't betray my sources, but first when I read it, I thought to myself, what's he done here? Has he done something behind the scenes? So there's that. Some people
it's created more speculation in a way, isn't it? They probably put the
ways.
statement out to be, because if they didn't say anything, you go, "Oh, why is he gone there when he seems to be a target?"
There's a set of precedent that whenever a player's dropped, you have to put a statement for every player. So if Will Davis King gets dropped from the squad, do we put a statement out saying he's not met, he's not met a scrimmaging target, so his weightlifting in the gym and stuff. So there's that kind of worms and that precedent. But I think that back Gatland making a selection decision, only he can answer that. And also, secondly, the second part of the question, I think you either put the statement out as it is and have a press conference, or you have more detailed quotes from Gatland. So I think I can see both sides. So I'm on the fence on that one for once.
Okay. So Wales at the World Cup then, Steff. Come on, put your neck on the block. Where are we going to finish? Can we get out of the group first of all?
Yeah, we can get out of the group. Obviously, there's a big fuss about Fiji. Obviously, the Drew have done, I know they got stuck with the Crusaders, but on the whole, they've done really well. That's really improved Fiji and rugby. I spoke to Simon Raiwalui recently, very good coach, highly rated, good man. They got some serious talent in that squad. So Seta Tamanivalu, ex-All Black, he got his name Semi Radradra, well, contender for a World 15. If you were doing a World 15, he'd be on your most people's list, wouldn't they?
Botier and all that as well.
Yeah, Botier, one of the best players in Europe, but
crazy.
There are a lot of players in that squad there on reputation as well, I think. And I think Wales would be fitter in the World Cup. I think they'll be technically better. I think they're probably going to have a better scrum than Fiji. So it's a losable game. But I'm going to put my neck of the line. I'm going to say the Wales are going to win it and they're going to make the quarterfinals. I'm going to say that. That's what I'm going to go
So no further than the quarterfinals then?
When you make a quarterfinals, it's on the day. I mean, England are beatable.
Yeah.
Argentina, they could play a beatable. But again, Argentina also could be dark horses. They beat New Zealand twice in the last World Cup cycle. So, but then again, Wales had a terrible autumn and still beat Argentina, didn't they? So, but I'm going to go quarterfinals. We could lose to Fiji. We have to pull our socks up. And the problem we got is the point I made earlier, the lack of, 2011, 2015, Foxy and Roberts, all the combinations of experience. We haven't got that in a lot of positions. But I'm going to say that the Wales' preparation and the clarity, that's one thing Gatland brings, clarity. We'll see us past Fiji. I don't say that with confidence. I may be badly wrong, but I'm going to say quarterfinals. What do you think? What do you think? You can't leave me answer everything.
No, I've been positive about Wales, even though we are in this shitstorm. I just think that the longer Gatland has with his players, the better they are. And that's been proven in history, isn't it? The longer time he's had them in camp, the better we've been.
Yeah.
We are on the right side of the draw. We're very fortunate. I honestly think we could make the semi-finals. I know some people will laugh. Some people laugh at me, but I genuinely believe on the day we can beat England. And if we get our shit together, and that's a big if, like you said, fitness is going to play a part. I think Wales can get to the semi-finals. I think we could surprise people. And Dan Bigger came out recently and said the same. I think we're going to surprise people. I know there's a lot of doom and gloom around Wales. Some people are convinced we're not going to get out of our pool. I think we will. I'm going to go for semi-finals. What do you reckon, Lee?
I think it all depends on the style of game that we want to play. And if we go back to Warren Ball and we go back to, that tried and tested thing.
Which has worked in the past. Let's not forget. That's what's brought us success, though, isn't it?
But
that has brought us success.
That was the past. And that's half the problem with Welsh Rugby. This is what we used to do and this used to work well. So I just can't. I think sides have evolved. Side defenses have evolved to the point where if you go, let's kick the ball deep into South Africa, and they'll sit there all day and they'll go, thank you very much. We were hoping you would, and they'll run it back. You do that to France, to Ireland, to England, Scotland now. You don't kick the ball deep to Scotland. So I think if we go back to that one up, crash ball inside centre and then kick, I think we're playing into other people's hands. If we use the skills that we've got in that side, we've got some really creative players in there, in the pack as well as out back. And I think if Gatland can allow himself to be a bit looser and let players play what's in front of them, then I think we'll start to evolve a game, and I think we'll build into probably quarterfinals with a possibility of that semi-final. It depends on how we play. So yeah, I'm still sitting on the fence until after we see, the warm-up games. I think it'll be interesting to see how we play against England in the warm-up games. And then after that, I think we can go. Then we'll be able to see how Gatland wants to play that game, because, like you say, he would have had them for a couple of months before then, and there's no excuses going into that game. We're going into the Six Nations. There was that little bit of, well, he hasn't really had the time. He's dealing with Pivac's squad. There's no excuses going into that World Cup. You're playing Gatland's plan. It's all his players. It's all his coaching staff. It's his kind of format. So I'd like to see us play that open game.
Okay, here's a question for you. And you mentioned the World Cup warm-up matches. Would it matter if we lost all our games? Would that concern you? Are results important in these warm-up games?
I think historically I'd say no. But it's more the fact that there's a lot of young players. I think Gatland might wield the axe a lot. And in the past, it's difficult because in the past you don't want to test combinations. But I think that South Africa's last, isn't it? I think. And
England home and away South Africa.
Yeah. I think South Africa is going to have to pick his strongest team. I think. I don't expect them to be perfect. They're going to hold some stuff back, but I think if they were getting 40-point hidings, then I'm going to be really worried. Whereas go back to 2015, mix a match against Ireland in the first warm-up game, we're stuffed, and all the people on the streets saying, "Oh, we're rubbish," blah blah blah. Then they won in Ireland with a stronger team the following week and made the beat England at Twickenham and made the quarter-final. So it's a phony war, the warm-up games. There might be a little bit more on them for Wales this time because of the lack of experience in the squad, I think. Okay. But it is a phony war. It's on the only game that really matters is Fiji and Bordeaux, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
On that note, Steff, we're going to wrap it up there, my friend. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you this evening.
Thanks for the invite. I really enjoyed it. Thanks.
No worries. I could talk for another 2-3 hours talking to yourself about Welsh Rugby. I really could, but we have got homes and beds to sleep in. And...
No, it's been really good talking to you, mate. And fingers crossed we can do it again someday with some positive news to report from the World Cup. And everyone's happy and singing and dancing, and 4 sides are profitable and exciting and developing interesting players. Who knows what will come? It's Welsh Rugby. So.
Thanks very much.
No problem.
Steff. Thank you.
Right, all the best. And on that note, Jay, we shall call it a night there, my friend. By the time this goes out, I will be sat on a beach in Mexico, sunning myself and enjoying life. So you enjoy yourself.
Sorry for some, isn't it? Yeah. A well-deserved holiday, Lee.
Yeah, absolutely. All the best, gents. Good night. And I shall speak to you again. All the best.
Lovely. Good night.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Wrap Podcast. We hope you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed recording it. Please do rate us and tell your friends, as it really helps us to grow and get better. We'll be back next week with more of the same, and until then, enjoy your rugby.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.